Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, "That was weird"? Someone kept looking at you. Someone laughed a little too hard at your joke. Someone remembered a tiny detail you mentioned 3 months ago, and somehow you convinced yourself it meant absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, everybody else is thinking, "No way, they don't know." Here's something fascinating. Many of the people who are considered attractive have absolutely no idea how attractive they are. Seriously, some of them spend years believing they're average. Some think they're awkward. Some are convinced nobody notices them. Yet they walk into a room and somehow everybody notices when they leave. Strange, right? And that's exactly what fascinated Carl Jung. Not beauty, not popularity, but the difference between who we think we are and how other people actually experience us. Because attraction is rarely just about appearance. In fact, some of the most attractive people aren't the loudest, the richest, or even the most confident. Sometimes they're the quiet person sitting in the corner wondering why people keep talking to them. If you've ever underestimated yourself, if you've ever assumed people weren't paying attention, if you've ever thought, "There's nothing special about me," this video might completely change how you see yourself. And here's the fun part. The signs we're about to discuss are often invisible to the person receiving them. That's why many attractive people miss them entirely. So while you're watching, I want you to keep score. How many of these signs have happened to you? And be honest. Don't brush them off. Don't explain them away, because by the end of this video, you may discover that people have been seeing something in you for years that you've never noticed. Let's jump into the first sign. And this one is surprisingly funny. Sign 1. People remember ridiculously small details about you. You know what's funny? Most people barely remember what they had for breakfast. Yet, somehow, they remember that random story you told 6 months ago. You mention one time that your favorite snack is chocolate chip cookies. 3 months later, somebody says, "Oh, look, they have your favorite cookies." Excuse me? How do you remember that? I don't even remember telling you that. Have you ever experienced that? Leave a comment if this has happened to you, because it's one of the strangest forms of attraction. People pay attention to what interests them. It's human nature. Think about it. You probably don't remember the license plate number of the car that drove past you yesterday, but you remember details about people who matter to you. You remember their laugh, their favorite movie, the way they tell stories, the weird phrases they always use. And here's where Jung's psychology becomes interesting. He believed we often project significance onto people who awaken something inside us. When someone fascinates us, our attention naturally becomes sharper. We observe more. We remember more, without even trying. That's why attractive people often become memorable without realizing it. Not because they're trying to impress anyone, but because something about their presence creates emotional impact. I once knew a guy who was convinced nobody noticed him. Classic case. Quiet, reserved, never talked about himself. One day he walked into work wearing a different watch, a completely different watch. Within 2 hours, 5 people mentioned it. 5. Now here's the funny part. The guy had worked there for years and thought he was invisible. Invisible people don't get 5 comments about a watch before lunch. That's not how invisibility works, and attraction often works exactly like that. You don't notice people noticing you. You only see your own insecurities. You see your flaws. You see the things you wish were different. Meanwhile, everybody else is paying attention to things you don't even think about. Maybe it's your energy. Maybe it's your smile. Maybe it's how comfortable people feel around you. Maybe it's your sense of humor. Whatever it is, people store information about you because they enjoy thinking about you, and that's a huge clue. But things get even more interesting with the next sign. Because this one happens right in front of your face. and most people completely miss it. Sign 2. People find reasons to keep the conversation going. You know that moment when you're trying to leave a conversation. You've already said goodbye. The other person said goodbye. Everything should be over, and then somehow the conversation keeps going for another 15 minutes. What is that? It's one of the oldest attraction signals in existence. People naturally extend experiences they enjoy. Think about your favorite movie. When it's over, you wish there was more. Your favorite meal. You wish there was one more bite. Your favorite vacation. You wish you could stay another week. The same principle applies to people. When someone enjoys your company, they unconsciously create excuses to remain connected. Suddenly they have one more question, one more story, one more thing they forgot to mention, one more reason not to walk away. And honestly, some of these attempts are hilarious. You've probably seen it happen. Someone says, "Anyway, I should get going." Then immediately starts a brand new conversation. You think, weren't you literally leaving 30 seconds ago? Attraction can be incredibly creative. People become conversation magicians. They'll find topics that didn't even exist 5 minutes earlier. And Jung would likely point out something important here. Human beings move toward what energizes them, toward what feels psychologically rewarding, toward what creates emotional engagement. That's why people linger around certain individuals. Not because they're forcing themselves to, because they want to. And if this has happened to you repeatedly, don't dismiss it, especially if different people do it. One person might just be talkative. 10 different people, that's a pattern, and patterns reveal truth. But the next sign is even more powerful, because it happens before anyone says a single word. And once you notice it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Let's talk about eyes. Sign 3. People keep looking at you when they think you're not watching. This one is fascinating, and once you start noticing it, you can never unsee it. Have you ever looked up unexpectedly and caught someone looking at you? The second your eyes meet, they suddenly become very interested in the ceiling, or their phone, or a wall that apparently became the most fascinating wall in human history. It's almost funny. And before anybody gets carried away, no, this doesn't mean every glance is attraction. Sometimes people are just daydreaming. Sometimes they're wondering if they know you from somewhere. Sometimes they're trying to remember where they parked. We've all been there. But when it happens repeatedly, especially from the same person, something different may be happening. People look at things that capture their attention. That's just human nature. Think about it. When you're in a beautiful city, you look around. When you see a cute dog, you look. When something interests you, your eyes naturally return to it, and people are no different. What's interesting is that attractive people often don't notice this because they're busy living their lives. They're answering emails, buying groceries, trying to remember why they walked into a room. We've all had that moment. You walk into the kitchen, stand there, and suddenly think, why am I here? What was the mission? Attraction isn't usually obvious when you're the one receiving it. You see yourself every day. You know all your insecurities. You know your awkward moments. You remember that embarrassing thing you said 3 years ago at a party. Yes, somehow your brain still remembers. Meanwhile, other people see something entirely different. They see your expressions, your energy, your confidence, your kindness, your uniqueness, and those qualities pull attention toward you. One woman shared a story that perfectly illustrates this. For years, she believed she wasn't attractive. Then one day her friend asked, "How do you not notice how often people look at you?" She laughed. She thought her friend was joking. After that conversation, she started paying attention. And suddenly she saw it. The coffee shop, the supermarket, the gym, the airport, not constant staring. Just repeated moments of attention. Moments she'd completely missed before, and that's the key. Many attractive people aren't unaware because they're arrogant. They're unaware because they're focused on living their lives. Now here's where things get really interesting, because the next sign has almost nothing to do with looks. In fact, it may be the most powerful attraction signal on this entire list. Sign 4. People open up to you, surprisingly fast. Have you ever met someone, and 20 minutes later they're telling you their entire life story? You weren't even trying. You asked one simple question, and suddenly you're learning about their childhood, their dreams, their fears, their relationship problems, their dog, their cousin's dog, and somehow their favorite pizza topping. How did we get here? Seriously. How did this conversation become a documentary? This happens more often around attractive people than most realize. Not because attraction is always romantic, but because attraction often creates trust. People feel drawn towards certain individuals. They feel comfortable, safe, accepted, understood. And when people feel those things, they reveal themselves. Jung believed that human beings are constantly searching for connection, real connection. Not small talk, not masks, not pretending, connection. And some people naturally create that feeling. The funny part? The people who create it often don't realize they're doing anything special. They're just being themselves. They're listening. They're present. They're genuine. And that's rare. Very rare. Today, everybody's distracted. Half the world is scrolling while pretending to listen. You've probably experienced it. You're talking to somebody. They're nodding, saying, uh-huh. But you can practically see them texting in their mind. It's like talking to a human loading screen. But when someone gives genuine attention, people notice, and they're drawn to it. That's why strangers sometimes reveal personal things unexpectedly. That's why co-workers confide in you. That's why people trust you quickly. Your presence feels attractive in a deeper way, not surface attraction, human attraction, the kind that makes people feel seen, and honestly, that kind lasts much longer. But the final sign might be the biggest clue of all, because it reveals something people do when they're genuinely affected by your presence. And once you hear it, you'll probably recognize it immediately. Sign 5. People talk about you even when you aren't there. Now this one is huge, and it's probably the clearest sign on today's list. You know you've made an impression when people bring you up in conversations you weren't even part of. Maybe a friend says, "Oh, we were talking about you yesterday." And immediately you're curious. Talking about me? Why? What happened? Should I be worried? Do I need a lawyer? But most of the time, it's completely positive. Someone mentions something that reminds them of you. Someone tells a story involving you. Someone repeats something funny you said. Someone recommends you. Someone praises you. Someone remembers you. Think about how significant that actually is. There are billions of people on Earth. For someone to think about you when you're not even present means you've occupied space in their mind. That's not something people do for everyone. And this connects beautifully with Jung's ideas. People leave psychological impressions on one another. Some impressions fade immediately. Others linger. The people who linger in our minds are often the people who impacted us emotionally. They made us laugh. They inspired us. They comforted us. They intrigued us. They made us feel something. That's attraction in one of its purest forms, not simply being admired, being remembered. And here's something worth thinking about. Many people spend years trying to become more attractive. They focus entirely on appearance. Nothing wrong with looking your best. But the people we remember most are rarely remembered only because of how they looked. We remember how they made us feel, the friend who encouraged us, the person who made us laugh during a difficult time, the co-worker whose energy brightened the room, the stranger whose kindness changed our day. That's the kind of attractiveness that grows stronger over time, and it's available to everyone. So let's put everything together. People may find you attractive if they remember tiny details about you. They keep conversations going longer than necessary. They glance at you more often than you realize. They open up to you surprisingly fast, and they talk about you even when you're not around. Now here's the most important thing I want you to take away from this video. Attractiveness isn't always loud, it isn't always obvious, and it isn't always something you can see in the mirror. Sometimes it's hidden in the way people respond to you, the way they remember you, the way they trust you, the way they seek your company, the way they smile when you walk into a room. The truth is, many people are far more attractive than they believe, not because they're perfect, but because they're human, because they have warmth, presence, character, humor, authenticity, the very things that create real connection. And maybe that's why so many people miss their own attractiveness. They're looking for perfection while everyone else is responding to their humanity. So here's my question for you. Which of these 5 signs have you experienced most often? Has someone remembered a random detail about you? Have people opened up to you unexpectedly? Have you caught someone looking at you? Or maybe you've discovered another sign that's not on this list. Share your story in the comments. I'd genuinely love to read it. And who knows, your experience might help someone else realize something they've never noticed about themselves. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more insights inspired by the timeless ideas of Carl Jung and the fascinating mysteries of human psychology. Until next time, remember this. You don't always see yourself the way the world sees you, and sometimes the qualities you overlook are the exact qualities that make you unforgettable.